Kim Jong-un's taste for war intensifying overnight. The rogue nation firing off another missile.
I think he's wanting to test the resolve of this new president, test the resolve of this new administration.
We're trying to continue to advance. We've got to push him back.
Conflict in North Korea would be probably the worst kind of fighting in most people's lifetime. It would be a catastrophic war.
The president is vowing to deal with those who are putting our national security at risk by leaking classified information.
It's borderline treason.
You believe it's treason to leak some of this stuff? You believe that's treason?
I do believe it is.
People who violate the Secrecy Acts ought to go to jail.
British authorities, meantime, dismantling the terror network behind the Manchester bombing, arresting a 16th suspect overnight.
Terrifying crash here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Oh my goodness, what a huge crash!
And you believe that driver walked away unharmed. That is a miracle in itself.
What keeps you awake at night?
Nothing. I keep other people awake at night.
It's Memorial Day. There's over 1 million veterans who have paid the ultimate price for our freedoms that we enjoy, and that's what Folds of Honor is about.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's
North Korea has fired an unidentified projectile off its east coast.
One thing we can't live with is a North Korea that has a nuclear weapon.
Conflict in North Korea would be probably the worst kind of fighting in most people's lifetime. It would be a catastrophic war.
The president is vowing to deal with those who are putting our national security at risk by leaking classified information.
It's borderline treason.
You believe it's treason to leak some of this stuff? You believe that's treason?
I do believe it is.
British authorities, meantime,
streaming and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
That is our nation's anthem, and that is Navy vocalist Christina Balava performing it for us this morning on Fox and Friends.
Actually, that made me cry.
Beautiful.
I mean, if you were in the studio right now, you could hear a pin drop. I mean, her voice at this hour in the morning too. Think about singing at 7 a.m. in the morning, and that was just so beautiful.
And a fitting way. You've got Memorial Day weekend on Memorial Day today. We're going to be honoring it all morning.
What a way to start.
That's right. And all of the pictures that you've been sending in, we asked you to memorialize those loved ones, family members, friends, neighbors that you wanted to memorialize on this Memorial Day, and you've been sending a bunch of photos in.
And they've been pouring in. Chris sends us this picture of Army Staff Sergeant James McNaughton, killed in action in Iraq on August 2nd, 2005, at just 27 years old.
So young. Well, Jill remembers her grandfather, John O'Brien, who made the ultimate sacrifice at the age of 26 aboard the USS Robalo on July 26, 1944.
And Anita sends us this picture of her cousin, Kenneth Alric Gore, who was killed in action June 3rd, 1967, at the age of 18 during the Vietnam War.
So many of them just 18 years old. And Chris remembers her late husband, Pooch Davies, a U.S. Air Force veteran who lost his life during the Vietnam War.
So keep sending in your photos this morning. Anybody that you want to memorialize in your family. Friends at foxnews.com is the email address, and we will share them throughout this Memorial Day broadcast.
It's so important, though, to look back throughout history in this country, of all the wars that have been fought, of all the incredible lives that have been taken to fight for our freedoms. As you mentioned, so many, too young.
If you don't remember it, then you're doomed to forget it or give it away. And this American experiment is preserved by men and women who put the uniform on and are willing, at the cost of their own lives, to defend it.
And to protect what we hold dear in this country. And that's really what Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly is talking about on Meet the Press this weekend. He believes that these intelligence leaks that have been coming out of this administration, wherever it's coming from, are rising to the level of treason. And
well, this is a guy that would know, right?
Exactly against what we were just talking about.
You are so right, Clayton. When you think about the men and women that go out and protect us every single day for our freedoms, and then these leaks that are coming out that really sabotage our own national security. I mean, to think about that today and how sad that is for all the people that are out there doing their very best to help this country.
They're thinking of the fact that I'm a soldier or I'm an intelligence operative, and I'm putting my life on the line to get you this intelligence, to figure this stuff out, and then some kid in the White House or National Security Council or somebody wants to be buddy-buddy with a reporter at the failing New York Times, and so they're handing over this intelligence, not understanding what it took to get it and the consequences of it being released and how much it undermines keeping Americans safe. And John Kelly understands that.
Yeah, and this was at the heart of the issue with the Manchester bombing, of course, when the UK handed us intelligence and right to the United States, was handed to the United States, and then it was leaked to the press. We saw bomb materials out in photos in the New York Times, and Washington Post, and other places. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly on this issue. Listen.
If it came from the United States, it's totally unacceptable. And I don't know why people do these kind of things, but it's borderline, if not over the line of treason.
You believe it's treason to leak some of this stuff? You believe that's treason?
I do believe it is. I believe when you leak the kind of information that seems to be routinely leaked, the high level of classification.
I mean, how is it? Yeah.
Well, if you just think about treason for a moment, right? You put those to death who share information with other spies, right? Other spies caught handing over classified information to Russia, the Soviet Union during the 1980s and beyond. That's treasonous. You're handing over classified information to other people. That is treason. What else?
I can't think of many things worse that you could do to sabotage your own country. So many people agree with him on that it is treasonous. We had a former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, on the show yesterday, and he's up in arms as well about this. He thinks that these leakers need to go to jail. Take a listen to what he said.
People who violate the Secrecy Acts ought to go to jail. What happened with the Manchester information, for example, after the bombing in Manchester, undermined the British investigation, weakened our relationship to our allies, and is dangerous. Whoever leaked that should go to jail. Now, you start putting a few people in jail, you'll see the leaks dry up dramatically.
Point's the same. This is not a game. This is not a parlor game. This is not palace intrigue. This is really significant stuff. And I think that's the level where it'll have to go. If these leaks continue, whether it's the inner circle or throughout the deep state, the bureaucracy, you got to find out who it is. Maybe it's a polygraph. I don't know. But there's ways to find out if folks are telling the truth about who's leaking information.
Well, that's why if you go to the front page of FoxNews.com this morning, front page story on whether or not there's going to be a big Trump shakeup, according to this report. When the president comes back from this Mideast trip, as he's now back, looking at his staff, wondering where these leaks are coming from, is there a shakeup in the wings?
What about the journalists, though, that are leaking out this information for the world to read? What happens to them? Because let's say that I was given some information from some unnamed source, and they can't, I can't clarify that. Yeah, and I'm thinking, oh, well, this is actually great for me because I'm going to get a lot of clicks on this story. It's going to be a very quick headline tomorrow morning. That's what many journalists are thinking about today, not what is in the best interest of this country. That is what is so dangerous about
Because you're a patriot, and if you're a patriot, you put the home team first, and you say, hey, I don't want to undermine the efforts of my country. We've lost so much of that with global citizens in newsrooms saying, I just want to be relevant, or I'm past this whole idea of American sovereignty.
A couple big headlines this morning from Secretary of Defense Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, who gave
He's good at headlines.
He is. There was a couple big takeaways. He sat down with John Dickerson yesterday on Face the Nation. A couple big takeaways, one of which was this question from John Dickerson asking about this recent bombing run in Mosul, Iraq, which killed 100 civilians. He asked him about that very issue, and are we going to see more of these civilian deaths? Here's how he answered it.
100 civilians were killed after a U.S. bomb hit a building in Mosul in Iraq. Is this the result of this faster tempo? Is this the kind of thing Americans need to get used to as a natural byproduct of this strategy?
The American people and the American military will never get used to civilian casualties. We will fight against that every way we can possibly bring our intelligence and our tactics to bear. People who had tried to leave that city were not allowed to by ISIS. We are the good guys. We're not the perfect guys, but we are the good guys.
I love that last line about we are not perfect, but, you know, we make mistakes, but we are the good guys. I am so frustrated at some of these interviewers when, as we've talked about before, you have such a short amount of time to ask these important people questions like James Mattis. You're going to ask him, is this what we have to get used to, civilians dying? What is he going to say? We should have more civilians dying.
Excuse me, General, do you like civilian casualty? I mean, he's spot on. This is a war fighter. He wants to crush the enemy. The enemy doesn't play by the rules. They don't wear uniforms. They hide amongst women and children. You said last hour, human shields.
Right.
That's what we have to deal with. If you want to kill him, you got to go after him. It's going to unfortunately mean that. Of course this guy cares about it, but he cares more about American boots and whether we're protecting those guys and protecting our country.
And perhaps a better way to phrase the question was asking him about dealing with that strategy that ISIS uses, human shields.
Exactly.
How do you deal with that? Obviously, civilian casualties at the utmost, you know, mind at the Secretary in the Defense Department. How do you deal with that?
You know, they have time to think about their questions, though. Usually they plan in advance of the things they want to ask someone like a James Mattis. So we also asked him this question that had a great response about what keeps him up at night.
What keeps you awake at night?
Nothing. I keep other people awake at night.
Boom.
True. Yeah,
I love it. I absolutely love it.
They're wondering where these next bombs are going to come as they go out. They've been forced out of their strategy over the past year to start shifting their strategy, not using phones, not being able, and they have to come out of their bunkers and drive to face-to-face meetings, and then they're bombed.
And what we've said is we're not going to let you skirt off to a new battlefield or go to another country and just occupy land. We are going to annihilate you, are the words that Mattis has heard. That will keep a puny little puke ISIS fighter awake at night. It will. And that's a wonderful answer. That's the attitude that we need in America.
That line is going to live on for a very long time, and I hope it does.
Many of Mattis's lines live on.
All right. Well, some other headlines we're following this morning. Jillian Mealy is with us.
Good morning.
Good Monday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's begin right now with the Fox News alert. A Navy SEAL falls to his death when his parachute fails to open, sending him plunging into the Hudson River. Thousands of people, including children, watching in horror at a Fleet Week event just outside New York City. His empty parachute landing in a parking lot. Witnesses say the SEAL, diving with the elite leapfrog group, detached from the chute before crashing into the water. The cause of the malfunction is under investigation. Also breaking right now, erratic North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un's taste for war intensifying overnight. The rogue nation firing off another missile, landing in the waters off Japan's mainland in the country's exclusive economic zone. The Trump administration ordering a third aircraft carrier strike force and one of the world's largest warships to the Western Pacific region. Terror threats at home could affect your next vacation. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly considering new security screening that includes removing more items from carry-on bags and banning laptops from all flights in and out of the U.S.
They're obsessed with the terrorists, the idea of knocking down an airplane in flight, particularly if it's a U.S. carrier, particularly it's full of mostly U.S. people.
The proposed rule would expand one already in place from 10 airports in the Middle East and Africa. Let's look at your headlines on this Monday. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
You got it. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Jillian.
All right, German Chancellor Angela Merkel says thanks to President Trump, Europe can no longer rely on the United States. Really? Dinesh D'Souza here to react next.
And if you're wondering where Steve Ducey is this morning, he is hanging out on a golf course in Oklahoma for the absolute best reason. And the sun is finally out there. Steve, good morning.
That's right. Let's see, sunup was 4 minutes ago out here in Owasso, Oklahoma. Right behind me, that's Tulsa. And last night, this club played host to the Folds of Honor Gala. It was stunning. Coming up, we've got Major Dan Rooney, plus you're going to meet a Medal of Honor recipient with a story you'll never forget. That's coming up live from the Patriot here in Owasso, where we've got an eye in the sky, and it is a beautiful day on this Memorial Day 2017.
Just days after President Trump lectured NATO members about ponying up more money for defense, German Chancellor Angela Merkel now admitting, saying, the times in which we could rely fully on others, they are somewhat over. This is what I experienced in the last few days, referring or implying President Trump. We Europeans must really take our destiny into our own hands. So, can Europe really no longer rely on America? Here to react, conservative filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza. So, Dinesh, you see the words of the German Chancellor. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's a kind of declaration of independence on the part of Angela Merkel, and it's very good news. It basically means that Europe will be taking more responsibility for its own security. At the first glance, this seems alarming because it changes arrangements that we've had in place really since World War II. But you've got to realize that the underlying logic of those arrangements has gone away. In the 1940s, we said we'll pay for Germany's security because we were afraid that the Germans would get so strong that they would essentially invade and dominate the rest of Europe like they tried to do with Hitler. And then during the Cold War, we basically said, listen, we're willing to carry Germany on our backs and pay for its security to prevent the Russians from being able to invade across the Fulda Gap. And now all of this has gone away, that we're living in a different world. There's absolutely no reason for us to be funding the security of a rich country. It's one thing to pay for welfare for poor people, but welfare for rich countries, that's something quite different.
Well, especially when they're unwilling to meet their obligations inside NATO. They only are supposed to pay 2%. Germany currently pays 1.2%. But they want to go on their own. Do they want to go on their own fighting climate change, on their own with open borders and mass migration and refugees? I mean, what does on their own look like without the United States?
There is a little bit of a psychological gap that has opened up between Europe and the United States. On the issue of climate change, for example, look, Angela Merkel has no idea whether the world is getting hotter or colder. The temperatures in Germany are just the same as they were when she was a kid. But climate change is a pretext for these statist governments to exercise more control over their free market economies. That's why they like it so much, and Trump is just not willing to go along with it.
Absolutely. Do you see this relationship getting stronger or frostier?
Well, I think in some ways a kind of alliance of equals is much better than a kind of dependent alliance.
Sure.
Because a dependent alliance breeds a kind of insecurity and also a kind of entitlement mentality. So I think that we'll have a healthier alliance with Europe, with each of us carrying our own weight.
Good stuff. Dinesh D'Souza, thanks a lot. Appreciate it this morning.
Thank you.
All right, coming up on this Memorial Day, a new report claiming the Department of Veterans Affairs is unfortunately still failing to meet all its obligations to our brave servicemen and women. VA Secretary David Shulkin here to respond to that and also what the VA does at burial sites around the country. And an incredible story of sacrifice when Steve joins us live from the Patriot Cup in Oklahoma next.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends. Some quick headlines happening today. Russian President Vladimir Putin is visiting France this morning. He'll meet with newly elected President Emmanuel Macron, the Kremlin, on a mission to mend ties. Their meeting comes a month after Macron accused Russia of hacking his campaign. Former FBI Director and now Special Counsel Robert Mueller will deliver the commencement speech at a private prep school. This afternoon, Mueller speaking to graduates at Tabor Academy in Massachusetts. It comes less than 2 weeks after being appointed to oversee an investigation into possible ties between Russia and the Trump campaign. And amid that investigation, President Trump is standing firmly behind Jared Kushner, defending his son-in-law and White House advisor against allegations that he inappropriately attempted back-channel communications with Russia. In a statement to the New York Times, the president says, Jared is doing a great job for the country. I have total confidence in him. Abby?
Thank you so much, Jillian. Well, Memorial Day is a time to remember our fallen heroes and to honor those who have served.
Soldiers like Army Master Sergeant Leroy Petrie, who lost his right hand hurling a live grenade away from his comrades.
That act earned him the Medal of Honor. And Steve joins us now with retired Master Sergeant Leroy Petrie and Folds of Honor founder Major Dan Rooney. They are live from the Patriot Cup in Owasso, Oklahoma. Thank you, all three, for joining us.
That's right. Thank you very much. Dan, great to have you back. Leroy, let's talk a little bit about what happened 9 Memorial Days ago today.
We were on a mission after a high-value target. Went into a compound. As we got in there, started clearing one of the buildings inside. I waited for another guy to bump me on the shoulder. We started to clear the courtyard. I got shot through both my thighs. PFC Robinson behind me got shot just below his left shoulder and in the midsection. I led him to cover behind a small building, which we called a chicken coop. We got pinned down by heavy fire, threw a grenade over. It bought us a lull in fire. Another ranger come running over, Sergeant Higgins. We started protecting the corners around the building. At that time, they started throwing more grenades, and one knocked them to the ground, and The second one that came in, it was right behind them. I reached over and I grabbed it. And
So the grenade is right next to you.
They're about 4 feet away, and it landed right behind them. And so I leaned forward and I grabbed it. And as I was throwing it away, I opened the hand and it exploded and completely took the hand, sat up, put a tourniquet on it, checked on my guys. They both actually got minor shrapnel. They both went back out on missions the next day. They both had families. And we all got out of there, luckily. We did lose one guy in the courtyard that day, Specialist Gaither Cole. And it's hard. Every Memorial Day, I try to honor him and his family that is surviving, his daughter, his brother, his sister.
Yeah. Of course, you were honored in the East Room of the White House by the President of the United States, awarded the Medal of Honor in 2011. And today you have this prosthetic hand, which you were showing me how it works. It's unbelievable.
I tell you, it's brought back a great quality of life. Receiving the Medal of Honor, what it represents to me is more than myself. It's all those who have served, all those who are currently serving, and especially those who paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Sure. Dan, regarding Sergeant Petrie's family, while he was recovering, you know, let's face it, we don't pay our men and women who wear the uniform enough. He's disabled. He's unable to work for a while. He's got a family. He's got a son, Austin, who wanted to go to college. He couldn't pay for it. That's where Folds of Honor came in.
Yeah, we're so blessed just to sit next to Leroy and the Medal of Honor around his chest and what it represents to this country, but to be able to step in and help his son Austin graduate, getting ready to graduate from Central Washington, is it's humbling. It's privileging. There's no doubt about that. And we've got over 13,000 recipients now, spouses and children who've had somebody killed or disabled, and this year we'll put over $15 million out the door coming up in August to help these families, but we have millions in unfunded requests, and that's why it's so important that people donate in honor of Leroy and all those who have made such sacrifices on Memorial Day.
And last night at the Hard Rock in Owasso, that's Tulsa right there. Owasso is about 6 miles to the left of it. As you take a look at your TV screen, you were the honored speaker last night for the gala, which raised a lot of money for more scholarships for families like yours. What does Memorial Day mean for you, Sergeant?
I like the word you used. I was honored. I was honored to be there, humbled to support and give back to what helped my family in a time of need. And Memorial Day for me is a time of reflection where we can honor all those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, to honor the Gold Star families, the surviving family members, and everyone that has met one of those warriors who paid the ultimate sacrifice. But it's a time of grief for many. But for me, I find joy knowing that there's programs such as this that help the families of the fallen and those that are severely injured.
Well, it is an honor to have met you, and thank you very much for your service. And Dan, today is the big Patriots Cup golf event. I'm actually going to play golf in public for the first time in my life, and you got a perfect day for it here in Oklahoma. Look at that. That's the golf course right there, the Patriot Cup, and it is beautiful, Dan.
Thanks. Gorgeous here.
It's very nice. All right. Guys, thank you very much for joining us today on Memorial Day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leroy.
It means a lot.
Yep, honored. All right, guys, thank you very much. Back to New York.
Thank you, Steve. That is a beautiful shot and some incredible stories there. Thank you so much.
Seems like he's done that before.
Yeah. Golf? I don't know.
Not golf.
No, let's see.
We're going
to get a camera on Steve swinging. I want to see how that looks, too.
I do, too.
And coming up on this Memorial Day, a new report claiming the Department of Veterans Affairs still failing our brave servicemen and women.
VA Secretary David Shulkin is here to explain how he plans to fix it next.
And he competes against hundreds of barbecue pitmasters, and he's a 4-time world champion. Up next, the ultimate grilling secrets from the king of barbecue himself. You do not want to miss this.
Vocalist Christiana Vilava performing the Navy hymn Eternal Father Strong to Save on this Memorial Day.
Yeah.
A fitting song. It's raining here in New York City.
Her
A somber
voice
morning.
is just beautiful. We've had the pleasure of listening to her all morning long.
Absolutely.
What a way to ring in this day.
It's part of what I love about this show. I mean, we're trying to do justice to this day. As you wake up in the morning, you know, what is the true purpose of Memorial Day? I can smell the barbecue on the side here. We're all going to barbecue today. But as long as you memorialize first, then celebrate. Celebrate the lives of those who gave so much for us.
And be proud of this great country. That is so right.
Yeah, when you're driving past mattress sales on this Memorial Day, remember what this day is all about. Which is why this morning on this show, on this Memorial Day, we wanted to bring in the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, David Shulkin, who joins us now on the state of the Veterans Administration. Nice to see you this morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, appreciate everything you do on Memorial Day, and we're going to ask you about the cemetery network the VA runs as well, and ceremonies that will be happening around the country. But first, just wanted to get your reaction to some new reporting from Circa News and others that the wait time persists. We've seen challenges at the VA in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. Obviously, you inherited problems with wait times and cover-ups there. How are the efforts going in improving waits so that vets are seen promptly?
Well, Pete, thank you. First of all, I hope everyone and all your viewers are having a very meaningful Memorial Day. We're focused on wait times, and things are getting better around the country. We've recently published all of our wait times so everybody can see exactly what the wait times are, so there's no hiding these problems. And where there still are wait time problems, we're laser focused to make sure that no veteran's waiting for care.
You've been meeting, according to the New York Times, with Jared Kushner, who's been tasked with the Office of Innovation, which is sort of a broad topic, but one thing that he's passionate about. He's been meeting with former Google executive Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman of Alphabet, about modernizing our government and trying to bring some innovation to government. In these meetings with Jared Kushner about modernizing the VA, what have you guys talked about? Anything you can share about that?
Well, I think you're exactly right. The problems that we're facing in the VA are really years and years of neglect, sometimes decades. We're running with systems that are 30, 40 years old. And what's happening in the Office of American Innovation is we're actually going to industry and we're trying to get the best practices that American companies have and make sure that our veterans have the very best care by modernizing our systems.
Yeah, you know, today's a day, of course, you think about those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice, but also the next generation of our military that are going to go out and make an incredible sacrifice for all of us. I would love your take on the president's most recent trip, his first international trip, where he talked very strongly about terrorism. He spoke to our troops on the way home. What did that do to boost the morale of our military?
Well, I think this was a very successful trip, and the president being abroad was very important for all of us to see. I think that the country wants America to lead. The country wants America to be strong. And, of course, having a strong VA is so critical to our national security. Watching the president feel so passionate about our military and veterans is something that I think all of us are very proud of.
Mr. Secretary, we talk a lot about the Veterans Health Administration, health care at the VA. We talk about benefits at the VA all the time. We rarely talk about the National Cemetery Administration. The VA runs 135 cemeteries around the country. A lot of services at those cemeteries today, so if people wanted to memorialize in person, they could presumably visit all these ceremonies.
Well, you're absolutely right. All across America today, the Department of Veteran Affairs is going to be welcoming families and friends of those that have fallen to serve our country. And each one of these cemeteries, there's going to be very special ceremonies to recognize and to honor those who have sacrificed for all of us.
Absolutely.
Right. Secretary Shulkin, great to have you with us this morning.
Sir, thank you very much.
It's an important day.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, as we go from really important topics to some fun topics when you're gathering up with the family.
And some yummy topics.
That's why we tasked Janice and Jillian this morning.
Yeah, how'd they get this task?
We're so left out. Take it away.
Here's the deal, guys. If you're planning on barbecuing today, you won't want to miss this. The winningest man in barbecue is revealing his mouth-watering recipe for ribs.
Yes, we are. Myron Nixon is also the mayor of a small town in Georgia and is known as the barbecue mayor. I've been dipping into your barbecue, my friend. It is delicious.
I'm glad y'all enjoyed it.
Thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
Tell us what you brought for us on
What
this
we got here
Memorial Day.
today, as far as the proteins, we got our baby back ribs right here. We got our sausage. We got our pork butts. All this came up from our restaurant in Old Town, Alexandria.
New restaurant, right?
You opened up in January.
Very nice.
Myra Mix and Pitmaster Barbecue.
How long have you been doing this for?
Started cooking with my dad when I was 9. He had a takeout barbecue business. Wasn't really learning nothing. Used me and my brother as free labor. But as I got older, you do learn stuff being around him, and started competing in 1996 and became the winningest man in barbecue.
So the winningest man in barbecue has to have some secrets. Do you have any you can share?
Yeah, like the ribs today. I mean, we get out here, and it's one of the probably one of the main proteins that anybody's going to cook this weekend, especially today. You want to get that membrane off the back side of them. These are pork ribs.
Come on over here, Pete. I know.
Well,
Get in
yeah,
here.
come on over.
Pete's been eating all morning long.
I was just going to come grab a rib.
Come on.
Yeah. All right, to make the rub or season it here, you want to take a little vegetable oil, just rub on it. You take your rub.
Spread that on top. While you're doing this, you have 3 books, right?
3 cookbooks. Got smoking with Myra Mixon. Right? Yep, generous amount. We got everyday barbecue.
Tell me
with
about
Myra
this
Mixon.
stuff. This
tangy sweet. It's got orange marmalade.
You like that?
Tangy sweet. Oh, it's my new best friend.
And you have a fundraising dinner coming up in June, right?
Yes, we do, for the USO.
How long have you been working with the USO?
I've made a couple of trips with the USO. We went to South Korea about 2 years ago. I've been to Kuwait. And we're trying to plan something this summer right now.
Very nice. And we have a couple, you're probably wondering why these bottles are here. We've got some champagne, some Brut Rosé. We have some still Rosé, both from France. And these apparently are supposed to pair well with everything on the table.
Mac and cheese, I've already dug into this. Tell me real quick about this.
Baby back mac and cheese.
Baby back mac and cheese.
It's absurd.
Oh, you dip it in? Oh, my gosh, I do that. Here we go. Dipping it in.
Go to foxandfriends.com for more recipe information. Myron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very
You're so
much.
distracted and busy. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
Who needs a spoon when you can just use a...
Yeah, exactly.
That was a great
Oh, I've got to get over there and fast.
You animals. All right, coming up here on the show, how can President Trump beat the press? Newt Gingrich has a plan.
The left-wing media hates Donald Trump. The left-wing media wants to destroy Donald Trump. This is why they should cancel the daily briefings.
Good idea. We're going to take a close...
If I said to you, oh, there's a lion eating a zebra, you wouldn't go, oh my gosh, I thought they'd become friends. How could that lion be eating his friend? You go, yeah, they're a lion. They eat zebras, okay? The left-wing media hates Donald Trump. The left-wing media wants to destroy Donald Trump. This is why they should cancel the daily briefings.
Cancel the daily briefings? Is that a good idea or totally absurd? Here to debate, former Trump Hispanic Advisory Council member Steve Cortez and Democratic strategist Steve Lester. Nice to see you this morning, both of you.
Good morning.
All right, Steve, our own Ed Henry has said you can't cancel the White House briefings. That's absurd. What do you say?
Steve Cortez?
Sure. Take it, Steve.
Yes, okay. Well, we're both Steve. I didn't know which one you wanted first. But look, you know, I think it's reasonable, of course. I think that if they do that, they better answer written questions because they do need to be accountable. But Mr. Gingrich is exactly correct. And I can tell you as somebody who was deeply involved in the campaign, I know many of the people in that briefing room. They don't just oppose Donald Trump's policies. They despise him individually in an almost visceral way, and they will not be satisfied until, in their minds, they get him impeached. Now, that's never going to happen, but that's truly the way they bring themselves to this work of the daily briefing. And what it's become really, in many ways, is an absurd sort of gotcha theater rather than healthy skepticism, which is what the media is supposed to do. That's not what the mainstream media has done in regards to the Trump White House.
Steve Lester, you think this is not, you disagree with him there? I mean, healthy journalism is not going on in the White House press corps?
Yeah, I mean, look, Trump and his surrogates, they need to stop whining about the press, and they actually need to start achieving something. I mean, Steve Cortez, just a couple of days ago, you said, well, I guess there have been a few stumbles by this administration right out of the gate. That's what the press is reporting on. You give them some successes, maybe they'll report on that for a change. You know, you have all of these broken promises, the scandals, the embarrassments. What do you expect the press to report on? If you want to assert there's a liberal media, fine, but this administration and its coverage isn't evidence of it.
Steve, we have plenty of successes, and I would point to the biggest three being the border. Well, you can laugh, but the American people aren't laughing because they know he's working on their behalf. The border is already largely secure, which is incredible.
The border that Mexico was going to pay for, that wall, that one, is that what you're talking about,
Steve? Steve, I'm talking. Secondly, we have a fabulous new Supreme Court justice now sitting. Thirdly, and I think most importantly, the economy at long last is accelerating, and optimism pervades, whether it's small business all the way to the stock market. There's an optimism out there that is palpable in the country. If you don't pay attention to what the Washington and New York journalists want us to believe, instead of Washington, go to Waco. Things are happening, and this president so far has incredible achievements that the mainstream media wants to ignore.
Steve Lester, the argument, though, is that the White House should just put out press releases, hand papers out to the press corps, get their take on it. Here's the official White House word. We're not going to get any questions back on camera. We're going to do it on paper. What do you think about that?
So you're going to punish the American people's access to this administration and its ability to hold the administration responsible. That's not the way to do it. Again, Trump and his administration and his cronies are very good at pointing the finger everywhere else except where it needs to be pointed, at Trump. He's the problem. And Steve, you can contradict what you said 3 days ago. You admitted yourself the administration has had missteps right out of the gate. That's the problem. It's not the press. It's not
Steve,
liberals. It's Trump.
Steve Cortes, final word.
Of course. What administration doesn't have some missteps? Of course there's been missteps. They're human beings. However, I would say this. The media, and I mean, this is, I think, undeniable. The media is out to get Trump, and they are antagonistic in a way that is totally irresponsible.
All right, guys, the two Steves, Steve Cortes, Steve Lester, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, coming up here on the show, how do you keep the tidal wave of drugs on the other side of the border? It starts with this ship and this man, Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly, in an exclusive Memorial Day interview with our own Rob Schmitt. That's coming up next.